Hey folks, I'm Mark Smith, host of the Four Boxes Diner, constitutional attorney, member of the Supreme Court Bar, and proud American gun owner. If you haven't shown your love for the Four Boxes Diner Second Amendment channel, please do so by subscribing today. Okay folks, we see that the anti-gunners are continuing to use the Congress to attack the gun industry. And again, we've talked about this. No gun industry means no guns. No ammo industry means no ammo. And by the way, if you destroy the American gun industry, you're not only hurting American civilians' right to keep and bear arms under the Second Amendment, but you're also risking our U.S. military forces that need firearms. They don't want to rely on the Russians and the like. And that's also hurting our American law enforcement. And it also hurts our ability to sell firearms overseas as an industry that we still do well at. Okay, here's what I want you to understand. Many of you have said things like, hey, no one can sue the gun companies over the criminal acts of third parties with whom they have no contact because they will win those lawsuits. Inevitably, the gun companies will win because there's nothing a gun company can possibly do, assuming they follow the law, which is, of course, to sell to a distributor. It's an FFL, right? The manufacturer of the gun's an FFL, which means they're federally licensed. They sell it to a wholesaler or distributor, which is also an FFL, which is, of course, also federally licensed by the federal government. They sell it to an FFL retailer, who of course is also an FFL, federal licensed by the federal government. And then they sell it to their first customer, that gun to the first customer, which will be done via a FBI NICS background check or some sort of background check. And then the gun goes out the door. And then, of course, the manufacturer at this point, this is months, if not years later, the manufacturer has no idea who bought the gun and anything. They just assume the law, that was it. And then if that person goes out and commits a heinous crime, or they give it to their friend and they commit a heinous crime, or it's stolen, or whatever happens, somehow it comes back to the gun companies. And of course, you're going to say to me, look, there's nothing wrong with a firearm, right? The firearm is designed to pull a trigger and shoot bullets. The gun company made a perfectly fine firearm to do exactly what it was supposed to do, which is to fire bullets, and it worked. So how can they be sued? And I agree with you completely. They should not be sued. It would be, in my view, frivolous or borderline frivolous to sue these gun companies over these types of third-party criminal behaviors with whom they have no contact with the criminals. Adam Lanza, the crazy psychopath who killed the children at Sandy Hook Elementary School, he killed his mother in the home and then stole her AR-15 and then took the AR-15 to the school and shot those people and then shot himself. But he didn't even buy the gun. It was his mother's firearm that he killed her and stole the gun. So how is Bushmaster possibly responsible for the actions of Adam Lanza killing his mother, stealing her AR-15, and then shooting up the school, and then killing himself? And how would you, as a plaintiff's lawyer, be able to prove that any marketing or advertising by anybody, frankly, on any topic, as far as I can tell, somehow contributed to Adam Lanza doing what he did? Obviously, you can allege it, but I gotta say, I would say that's a very difficult case to prove in court if you ever had to go do it. And we know the Bushmaster case was settled out of court by the insurance companies, at least according to reports, that the insurance companies just paid the money to the victims. There was never a trial, meaning the plaintiffs never had to prove during a trial in front of a jury that indeed the gun manufacturer's marketing material somehow caused Adam Lanza to become a psychopath and do what he did. But again, from a plaintiff's lawyer point of view, the plaintiff's lawyers there did a good job. They got what the clients wanted, which is a large financial settlement. So it looks like the lawyer in there was quite good under the circumstances. So it is what it is. But let's move on as to why the anti-gun community, even if they can't win these cases at trial, still wants to be able to bring them and still sue. It's because this is a form, in my opinion at least, of lawfare. What's going on here is not that they want to win lawsuits, it's that they want to bring lawsuits against the gun companies and put these companies through years and years and years of what I call Christina Blasey Ford, Brett Kavanaugh land, or Amber Heard, Johnny Depp land. What I mean by that is they want to have a basis to sue the gun companies anytime someone is shot with a gun and killed with a gun through a criminal act, especially if it's a high-profile one. They want to be able to sue the gun companies and put each of these gun companies through multiple years of litigation. Keep in mind that I think the Amber Heard, Johnny Depp case, which was just tried and resolved, that litigation fight had been literally going on for years and years and years, and I'm sure it was costing both of them a lot of money. They want to do that to the gun company. So even if the gun company, after all those years of litigation, winds up winning the case, meaning they don't have to pay damages, they're found not liable, or the case is dismissed. The fact that the gun company had to go through years and years of litigation, pay their lawyers, or pay higher insurance premiums to the insurance companies that were paying the lawyers, they had to go through all the time and emotional energy. Because remember, when those gun company lawyers and the gun company employees and the gun company people are focused on winning a lawsuit from some crime they had no connection with years earlier, that is mental energy. That is mental energy and time and expertise that is being devoted to sitting in a conference room with a bunch of geeky lawyers talking about a case, rather than laser focused on building their company, increasing the wages of their employees, selling more product, inventing new products, getting more patents, creating value for shareholders, whatever it is that companies usually do for profit to advance the company. But if you're bogged down in lawsuits and litigation, then you're distracted. You're not going to be doing what you need to do to improve the company, because you're going to be fighting a rear guard action against people that are trying to take you down. Now let's talk about an example of even if you win, you still lose. I think a great example of this is the Christina Blasey Ford Brett Kavanaugh saga during the nomination process. We all know the story. Brett Kavanaugh really was sailing through the nomination process. He was clearly going to be the next Supreme Court justice. And really at the 11th hour, a woman, Christina Blasey Ford, I believe she was living in California at the time. She was brought forth as a witness to testify against Brett Kavanaugh about something that occurred, I believe, when they were both teenagers. And we don't need to recount the allegations there. But at the end of the day, after, I think it, delayed the confirmation process a couple weeks, it was a bloody fight. Brett Kavanaugh literally was talking about his virginity in public, in high school, and all this crazy stuff that I'm sure was incredibly embarrassing for Brett Kavanaugh and his family and his daughters to have to suffer through. I'm sure there was a terrible emotional toll on all of them as they went through this stress. At the end of the day, Brett Kavanaugh, I would say, won that matter because he was confirmed by the U.S. Senate to the Supreme Court. So in one sense, Brett Kavanaugh won the case, right? He won the matter because he got confirmed to the U.S. Supreme Court. And I'm glad he did. But he certainly lost the situation because he was incredibly embarrassed. Now everyone attacks him. He can't eat at restaurants. People just make his life miserable. And by the way, they did the same thing to Clarence Thomas 20 years earlier and to Robert Bork before that. The point being is this, that even if you win the case, and Clarence Thomas got on the Supreme Court, Brett Kavanaugh got on the Supreme Court, they still paid a hugely heavy price and in some ways still lost the case because they both sort of had reputational hits that they've never recovered from and probably never will, because the media will continue to relive these moments on and on and on. So the point is that even if you sue gun companies and the gun companies ultimately win the case, the price they will pay in terms of time and emotional and mental energy will be huge. So why are these anti-gunners suing? I want to just give you a quick list and then close for today. First of all, I think they're trying to drive up the cost to the gun industries and the gun companies. They're forcing them to raise their prices to you and me. Because remember, every time the gun companies have to pay extra high insurance proceeds or premiums, every time they have to pay lawyers a lot of money to defend them, guess what? They have to pass those costs along to their customers to recoup those costs. So that means that you and I are going to be paying higher gun prices, higher ammunition prices, high prices for all the accessories, on and on and on, because again, the cost of making these products, which would include legal fees and insurance premiums, will be passed along to the people that ultimately buy the product. So it's going to cost all of us more money to exercise our Second Amendment rights. The next thing, of course, I think the anti-gunners want to force them to try to change their policies. We actually saw this in the 1990s with the old Smith & Wesson. I want to be clear, that's the old Smith & Wesson, because I think the old Smith & Wesson, as I recall, was owned by a much different group that owns them today. So I don't think we're talking about Smith & Wesson today, but back in the 1990s when Smith & Wesson, the company, was, I think, being sued or was part of a situation where Bill Clinton was trying to get the gun industries to reform their ways, Smith & Wesson, I think, agreed to some form of internal regulations or whatever. I don't remember the details there, but the bottom line is this, that it was about changing the practice by which they made and sold firearms, and that was in the late 1990s. It did not go well for Smith & Wesson back then. Again, I think they have brand new owners now, so whatever happened then should not be held against the current Smith & Wesson owners. At least that's my understanding. They're totally different people. But back in the 90s, Smith & Wesson, because of all this pressure from lawsuits, wound up having to they chose to modify their practices to try to minimize those losses from these legal problems. And again, I think the anti-gunners would like the gun industry to voluntarily change and voluntarily stop selling things like AR-15s if they could do it. And I think the last but not least thing is I think that they like these gun companies to basically stop selling guns altogether if they can make them happen. I mean, if a company goes into bankruptcy and stops selling guns, well, you've kind of put them out of business. And that happened in the 1970s where there were many guns that sold what were called Saturday night specials. And I think a lot of them got put out of business because of various legal problems. And they just couldn't afford to sell the guns anymore. So they either stopped selling those types of guns that the anti-gunners didn't like, or they just went out of business altogether. And I think that's at the end of the goal of the anti-gunners is to make it so expensive to do business in the gun space that people will simply stop selling guns and ammunition. They will conclude it's not worth our time. We're going to go do something else. And that would be a huge win for the anti-gunners, because even if you and I have the right to keep and bear arms, it does no good if we can't get guns and ammunition. Now, I understand there are ways around this. You can make your own gun, which is people have been doing for hundreds of years. You can, make your own ammunition. Many people can do this. But the reality is all that is a pain in the butt in many respects. And it's a much easier to go buy a firearm from a store for most people, not everyone, for most people. And that certainly should and hopefully will always remain an option here in the United States, in addition to the options of, procuring and making firearms in other ways, including do-it-yourself efforts. Okay, I hope you learned something here at the Four Boxes Diner. If you haven't subscribed, please do so, and we'll see you again soon here at the Four Boxes Diner.
Orders up. Table 2A.